We've got one more game left to go in the regular season and a whole lot at stake for our Kansas Jayhawks as we are headed to Fort Worth, Texas, facing off against the 6-5 TCU Horned Frogs with a lot to play for, including basically any chance we have of making the college football playoff. We got to win this game, and we're probably going to need a little bit of help across the rest of the country. Ever since we lost to Kansas State a few weeks ago, we've kind of known that we have to win out if there's any chance we can get into the playoff. And since that game against Kansas State, we've been able to rattle off a few wins. We've been playing quite well. But again, we're still going to need some things to go our way, whether that's within the Big 12 race to make the conference championship or the top 25 poll in order to get an at-large spot. Since the Kansas State game, we blew out Houston at home for Senior Day, and then last episode we head on the road to Ames, Iowa, facing off against the Cyclones in what ended up being a really close game, 38-31 against that Iowa State team who really hasn't been all that good this year, but they kept us on the ropes the entire way. The true freshman running back, Cornell Teamer, really stood out. He scored twice in this one, but we had some guys banged up. Ty Lord was in and out in the second half. Mario Maddox, arguably our top receiver, tore his pec. Done for the rest of the year, and we're going to have to find a way to replace him. He is narrowly second in terms of catches and yards on the team, so we're going to need Amani Law to be more consistent. We're going to need Rajon Jones to step up. Who's going to play in the slot instead of Maddox? It's probably going to be mostly Dorian Pepper, but I'm going to get these running backs in there as well. Any way we can get Cornell Teamer and Ty Lord on the field more is a good thing. They were both athletes coming out of high school. They both have a little bit of experience at wide receiver, and I want to see what they can do at that spot. I think both of them have good pass catching ability. We just haven't necessarily needed to use it yet. So as we look at the possible scenarios for us, if we want to make the conference championship, we need a few things to go our way. Obviously, we need to beat TCU. That's pretty obvious. Nothing Kansas State does will affect us now because Kansas State is ahead of us by a game and they had the head-to-head tiebreaker. So the only way this would work is, again, if we win and then both Arizona State and UCF lose. Arizona State plays against Arizona. That's going to be a tough game for the Sun Devils. We played against and lost to Arizona earlier in the year, so we know that they're quite good. As for UCF, they have a much easier game. They're playing against Texas Tech, 4-7. They're not particularly good, whereas UCF, I think, head-to-toe is probably the best team in our conference right now. I don't feel great about that one, but we can hope. So regardless, the chances of us making the conference championship are pretty slim, but that doesn't necessarily mean all hope is dead, per se. As we look at the college football playoff bracket, right now, Clemson is the last at-large team in as the 11th seed. They are currently ranked 9th in the poll. Florida, who's number 10, is also in there as a conference champion. So essentially, we are currently the second team out of the playoff because there are two current conference leaders below us. So we would have to jump 2 teams in order to make it into the at-large field. So basically, we need chaos to ensue in terms of the teams around us in the rankings. We need them to lose. USC, Georgia, even though they're below us, I feel like they could easily jump us given that they have better or equal records and they play in better conferences. Teams ahead of us like Stanford, Clemson, Florida, Oklahoma. All of those teams losing would be very beneficial because that would help us jump them in the rankings and could help us secure an at-large spot ahead of them. It would certainly help us if USC and Georgia lost as well, gives us a little more breathing room, so go Notre Dame. Go Georgia Tech, and I'm excited to cover the games across the nation later in today's episode, especially if we beat TCU, because then that will all be relevant. But first, we're going to start with recruiting going across the country and taking another look at the recruiting trail. And again, since this is the only game today, I figured that we're going to start with this. So as I simulated through the previous week against Iowa State, hoping for some good news. Obviously, things are starting to tail down a little bit. Most of our competitive recruiting battles have wrapped up, but we did land a few guys in this cycle, including defensive end Josh Metz. A 4-star from Bishop DuBourg in St. Louis. I think Metz is going to be a really good complementary piece for the defensive line as an early down run stopper type. I don't think he's ever going to put up the big sack numbers, but he's going to be a good guy to have in rotation with the other talented defensive linemen on the roster. Linebacker Bo Muse, a 4-star from O'Fallon, Missouri. Wentzville Holt High School, a fringe top 150 player nationally. I've been wanting to add more depth in the linebacking core, so this is a big get. Very competitive recruiting battle, but he's not the only one. Taylor Kotuvides from Seguin High School in Arlington, Texas, will be joining as well. I think we've really set up the linebacking core well for the future with these guys, along with getting Leon Ibrahim much earlier in the season. Those are 3 players who I think could have big roles for us down the line. Best of all, we don't have anybody on the board committing elsewhere this week, so that's a win. Kion Farot is down to 3 schools. We are in the lead for him. Markel Jocelyn is down to 3. We are in the lead for him as well. Both of those, especially the race for Farot, looks to be really competitive, with Maurice Waddy down to 5 and Ofisa Sami down to 8. So now the recruiting list is continuing to look stronger and stronger. Our team ranking is moving higher. We are now currently ranked number 6. So we have a real shot of landing our 2nd consecutive top 5 class. We'll see if we can do it with still plenty of good players left on the board. But nonetheless, I feel really happy with this group. We came into the year with a clear direction, really wanted to focus on the trenches, especially defensively, and we did that. Last year, it was about the skill position players, adding some style and pizzazz to the offense, but now we had to add the fluff inside, which we were able to do. Kion Farot looks like the most competitive battle right now. We have the lead, but he's visiting Wisconsin this week. That's a little bit concerning because the Badgers are not too far behind us. If that visit goes well, they could easily pass us and steal him at the end. Markel Jocelyn, I think we're in a good spot with. He visits UAB next week. I think it'll be too little too late. I think we should be able to land him. Greg Von Olhofen, I thought he was going to commit this week, to be honest, but yeah, this one's a done deal. I think he's one of the best players on the board. That would be a huge get for us. Manu Toilolo, look how close this race is. We pass Arizona for 2nd place, and we're putting a little bit more influence right now than Oklahoma State is, so I think we've got a real chance to pass them as well and land him, but it is going to be very close with all 3 teams certainly in the mix. So this is how we're going to use all of our hours. We're going to really start to go in for Rasheem Diggs now that USC has entered the race. We're going to put some points into some of the players who we just recently put on the board in the last episode. Wilbon, Ivy, McGoulahan, and Merrill. So let's now take a look at TCU. We know what is at stake in this game. Obviously, a potential conference championship bid, a potential playoff bid on the line. We need some things to go our way across the country in the other games, but none of that matters if we don't take care of business here. TCU is really solid, 6-5. Now, they've played against some good teams down the stretch, and they've gotten exposed a little bit, losing to Utah, UCF, and Kansas State, but they kept the game against the Wildcats quite close. They just beat Oklahoma State on the road, who isn't great, but isn't horrible either. 6-5, 4-4 in conference, led by Josh Hoover. He has been their starting quarterback over the last 3 years. We've gotten to see him 3 years in a row. TCU has been a mainstay on our schedule. I would guess they're going to have a busy quarterback battle in the offseason to replace Hoover. Cam Cook has been the starting running back the last 3 years. He is still here. The receiving room looks a lot different, though. They've had a lot of guys drafted to the NFL. Their standout sophomore, Roberto Ruiz, is injured, but Braylon James is really good, nearing 1,000 yards this year. And then, as I look at the strength of this team, I look at the defensive line. I don't think they're going to have anybody drafted super early, but guys like Michael Ibukan Oyakode and Paul Oyawale, along with some of the younger players. I've been looking at offensive and defensive linemen for the Broncos franchise for the prospect profile that's going to be uploaded tomorrow. And I noticed that TCU's got a lot of them, not just this year, but in future years, which doesn't surprise me because when we played against TCU last year, I thought their D-line was really good. This is now the 3rd straight year we've played against the Horned Frogs. Each of the first 2 matchups ended up being really competitive. We won both of them, but each game was really exciting. Season 1, we had the comeback. Last year was a really thrilling game. We ended up winning, I think, by 9. So TCU always gives us a good one, but unlike the first 2 years, we are on the road this time, and it's their senior day as well. Blitz to start! Hoover is sacked on the first play of the game. Mo Nwokeji, the redshirt freshman, is into the backfield to bring him down inside the 5-yard line as it's a 3rd and 17. Hoover looks to throw it, steps up, and is sacked. Who else but Travion Ford, the standout senior, joined by the true freshman Devin Murphy. So Kansas is going to start with really good field position. Obviously, we've got to keep our eye on Dorian Pepper, who's now playing the slot. Of course, he was redshirted last year. One of the 4 games he played was against TCU, where he scored a 60-yard touchdown as he can't hang on to that one on the first play from scrimmage. 3rd and 2 now. Whoop! Cornell Teamer jukes away from the defender, and he is gone! The true freshman into the end zone for a 37-yard touchdown, and Kansas strikes first. Teamer had a huge game last week, over 100 rushing yards, scored twice, including a 70-yarder. Here he gets one from 37 yards out, and I feel like Cornell Teamer's development is really coming along nicely. It was up and down with him earlier in the year, but I feel like his vision and his patience as a runner has gotten so much better. The sky really is the limit for him. As TCU gets it back, 3rd down, Hoover looks to throw it. Under pressure, looking downfield, it is broken up in the secondary by Marcus Ashe. Dakias Brinkley, the standout junior, is the one with the pressure. As Kansas gets it with a 3rd and inches. Play action for Lord. Teamer looking for Amani Law, the true freshman. Law running sideways. He thinks he's faster than everybody, and he might be right. 10, 5, tackled at the 1 as he's not quite able to take it all the way. A gain of 45 yards, though, for Amani Law, the native of Texas, played at the powerhouse Duncanville High School. A return home for not just Law, but many of our guys on this roster from the big state of Texas. What a play, though, by Amani Law. Again, showing off his speed. He's the fastest player on the field. And again, he knows it. That's a risky play to make, to cut all the way across the field, but it works. And then on 1st and goal, it's the big fella, Jazir Tolbert, who's in for the rushing touchdown, and the redshirt freshman adds to the lead for Kansas. It's 14-0. In a must-win game, the boys have come to play early. 3rd and 5 for TCU. Hoover looks to throw it, and he will throw it away. Our pass rush has been relentless so far. 3 drives, 1 first down for the Horned Frogs. That is not very good. 3rd and 8 for Kansas. Poole rolls out, has space, runs for the first down, past the 50, sliding at the 45-yard line for a really nice gain of around 23 yards. Big run for Clyde Poole as it's a 2nd and 7. Fakes the handoff for Pepper, and Johnny Thompson Jr. loses a couple of yards. Big play at the line of scrimmage made by Jonathan Bax. 3rd down, play action for Lord. On the run, looking for Jones, and it's broken up in the secondary. That was a good route by Rajon Jones. He had a step on the defensive back, but the pass was a little bit underthrown, and Jordan Lester is able to make the play. Play action from Hoover. Under pressure, sacked in the end zone. 2 hands for safety. Champ Tompkins is the one who brings him down. That's already 3 sacks for the Kansas defense here in the first quarter, putting on a show. Final play in what has been basically a perfect first quarter, ending off really strong as Jazir Tolbert gets the first down, and that'll do it for the first quarter here in Fort Worth. What a start for the Jayhawks. We lead 16-0. A pair of rushing touchdowns and the safety. We have 140 yards of offense while TCU has 5. Oddly enough, though, the time of possessions are pretty equal, which is strange considering how different the offensive play has been. Up the middle on 3rd down, it is incomplete. I know that looked like a bad throw, but hear me out. Dorian Pepper was going to be open. Clyde just threw the ball a second too early. 2nd and 5, untouched in the backfield, Dakias Brinkley with the sack. That is now 4 for the Kansas defense. Brinkley, the all-time Kansas leader in sacks, as it's 3rd and 12. Looking downfield, broken up by Samuel Mpemba. This game has a chance to get ugly fast. This has been domination. 3rd and long after a holding call. Poole scrambles. Look at this. Wide open, Isaiah Lamore! Inside the 10. I thought he was going to run away from that ball and not make the play. I got scared for a second. It's a gain of 48, though, for the sophomore tight end. Everything right now is clicking for us on both ends of the field. 2nd and goal. Jones in motion. Poole scrambles to the right. Nobody's open, so he's going to look to run, and he will trickle his way into the end zone for a touchdown. Clyde Poole adds to the lead for Kansas. It is 23-0. TCU's got to get their act together. This has been a pathetic display by them so far. Second down, play action. Hoover, he connects. Finally a productive play past the 30. A nice gain there for the talented tight end, Lafayette Kayue, the junior from Arlington. And of course, it's not going to count. Holding against Tobias Steps, and instead of having it at the 37, they now have it at the 7. Second and 13, Hoover looks to throw it up the middle. They'll get the first down after all. Braylon James has been one of the best playmakers in the Big 12 this year, replacing the first-rounder J. Michael Sturdivant. Is on 3rd and inches. Hoover, play action again, another first down, and a big play after the catch, followed by a big hit. The redshirt sophomore Geckel Baker gets 25. Second and 4, play action for Cook. Hoover on the run, goes short, and Brandon Hines delivers the hit on the receiver. That's Shane Stites, as Hines is banged up after the play. 3rd and 4, Hoover hit as he throws on the blitz. It's incomplete. Travion Ford and Samuel Mpemba both sending pressure. It's a pectoral strain for Hines. We're going to be very cautious with him, seeing what happened with Mario Maddox last week. On 4th down, it's a 45-yard field goal try for Nate McCashland. The kick is good for the redshirt junior, and TCU is on the board. Chris Paul hits a huge 3 to cut the lead to 43. 23-3 now. 3rd down and 1. Stewart gets nothing. Big stop by TCU to force the punt. Brock Atwood brings him down. So the Horned Frogs are going to get it back. You never know, if they score a touchdown, they could be back in the game. Hoover with a strike on 1st down. Down the field, inside the 20. Again, it's the tight end, Lafayette Kayue. Now inside the 10, 2nd and 3. Hoover steps up in the pocket, looking, end zone, touchdown. TCU cuts the lead to 13. Major Everhart, the senior receiver, strikes the pose in the end zone. We might have ourselves a ball game again. 23-10. Kansas looking for one more drive before the end of the half. Wide open. Amani Law, juke move, breaks another tackle, and he gets it past the 50 as Kansas is going to call a timeout, looking to get into field goal range now with 10 seconds left. On 2nd down, Poole looks to throw it. Patient. Finally has somebody open. It's Ty Lord to the 25, lining up in the slot. Now with 5 seconds, we're going to run the ball. Try to center the kick, but look at the clock. The clock strikes 0. We can't call the timeout in time. And that'll wrap up the first half. Some piss-poor clock management by Kansas. With Escalante's struggles in the hash marks and having the extra timeout, I wanted to center the kick and get it a little bit closer. But the play lasted a half second too long. Even though that was not a good way to end the first half, it's hard to be too upset because we have performed pretty much lights out, up 23-10. Certainly slowed down defensively, allowing a couple of scoring drives late, but the pass rush has been dominant with 4 sacks. The passing offense has been solid. The run game has been pretty good. Cornell Teamer is off to another very good start. Let's keep this lead. Let's keep the pedal to the metal. There were so many games, especially last year, where we started really well and then just played worse and worse and worse as the game went along. And so we can't let the lights be too bright given the circumstances of this game, and we can't let the game get away from us. We start with the ball in the second half. This is a perfect opportunity to strike first. 3rd and 5. Poole looks to throw it. Under a little pressure, dances around, and he is sacked in the backfield. First of the game for TCU. Lucas Samsula and Jonathan Bax bring him down. A big stop for the Horned Frogs as it's 2nd and 17. Looking for the screen. They are unsuccessful. Devin Murphy and Seth Jennings are there. Murphy will get full credit with the sack as it is a 3rd down and 26. Hoover looks to throw it. Takes a shot downfield. One-on-one coverage. It's caught. Shane Stites is gone. A 79-yard touchdown for the redshirt freshman running back who gets a step on the linebacker Samuel Mpemba to take it to the crib, and all of a sudden, the lead is within 1 score. We were up 23-0 at this time in the second quarter. Now we're up by 6. Death, taxes, and allowing way too many big plays defensively. So now we've really got to get it together. The comeback is within reach for TCU. As Poole is sacked again. The Horned Frogs have all the momentum right now. Lucas Samsula with 1.5 sacks in the 3rd quarter, and now TCU can take the lead. This one is caught. A nice play after the catch. A first down for Geckel Baker as they now have it past midfield. A pivotal 3rd down and 8 now. Hoover looking for James, who cannot hang on. Marcus Ashe delivers the boom. Good coverage as well by Caleb Purdy. Huge stop by the defense to force a punt as we're going to look to get it back. Hopefully with good field position. But look at this ball. We're going to let it go. And it is out of bounds at the 2. What a punt. And we've got to get out of safety territory. 1st and 10. Handoff up the middle. Tolbert breaks the tackle. Great run by Jazir Tolbert to get us out of safety territory. And guess what? Not going to matter. Holding on Amir Herring. That'll make it a 1st and 9 at the 3. At least we're a little bit closer now. Unfortunately, that play is taken off the board, and we're going to look to throw the ball. Poole connects with a first down. Cornell Teamer makes the play. We trusted Clyde Poole not to do anything stupid there, and it pays off. 2nd and 9. Poole on the run. He's picked off! Interception! Jamel Johnson wrapped up at the 20. I guess we couldn't trust him to not do anything stupid that time. The Horned Frogs are going to start the drive with outstanding field position. They are in the red zone already with a chance to take the lead. Cook on 2nd down, breaking tackles, gets the first inside the 10. I cannot believe this. We were up 23-0. 3rd and goal, toss for Cook. Bounces off a blocker. He is in for the lead pending the kick. But not so fast, partner. We've got a flag. Ball won't lie, suckers. Ben Taylor Whitfield, the left tackle, called for the holding. They weren't even running towards the left side. That's a horrible penalty. 3rd down and goal now. Hoover is sacked again by Travion Ford. What an unbelievable season it has been for Ford. He's at what, like 12, 13 sacks now? I'm excited to talk about him and the Broncos prospect profile. He is going to go early in this year's draft, given how well he's played this year. McCashlin's field goal is good, so TCU does take advantage of the turnover with a field goal, but it feels like they could have gotten more. Kansas holds on to the lead. This has to be the drive where we get something going as Jazir Tolbert runs through a man's face and gets the first down. We scored on each of our first 2 drives, but it has been quiet since as Thompson gets 4. That'll wrap up the 3rd quarter. Not great. We were up by 13 going into the half, and now we only lead by 3. We've got to hang on if we want to hold this ranking and hold any chance of making the college football playoff. We were up 23-0. I thought this was going to be a blowout. I thought we were going to get to put the backups in. Not quite. 3rd down and 6. Poole scrambles with it, looks to run, gets the first down, fumbles the ball, and it's scooped up quickly by Amir Herring, who was called for the holding earlier. Whew, we just dodged a bullet on that one. That was dangerous. Jamel Johnson, who had the interception earlier, is the one with the fumble force. Poole going to run it again on 1st down. Gets the first to the 35. Good on Clyde Poole for keeping a short memory and scrambling with it. 2nd and 4 on the run. Looking for another first down, and he is out of bounds inside the 25. Play action on 1st down. Short throw for Lamore. 1st down, looking for a block from Pepper as he gets around 20 and brings it inside the 5. For Isaiah Lamore, that is now 500 yards on the season. Also nearing 1,000 for the career as we're now at the goal line. Wide open in the end zone, it's Ty Lord in for the touchdown. We needed that drive badly. The offense had hit a cold streak. I think we were probably 1 of 6, 1 of 7 in terms of scoring over our last 6 or 7 drives. We had to get that one. Big drive, big touchdown for Lord, and it's a 10-point game. Off the blitz. That play goes backwards. Brian Dilworth with the hit. Seth Jennings delivers the pressure. Jennings has not recorded a stat today, but he has a lot of pressures. He has had an impact on this game, even if it is not shown on the box score. 2nd and 12 up the middle. Nice throw and catch for a first down to around the 30-yard line by Geckel Baker. He's had some nice grabs today. Following play for the Horned Frogs. Hoover looks to throw it. He is picked off! Caleb Purdy, the senior, with the interception. His 2nd straight week with a pick and his 3rd of the year. Kansas forces a huge turnover, and all of a sudden, the momentum has switched back to us. We have regained control in the driver's seat, up by 10 with good field position. Shout out to Purdy, who of course had the pick six a week ago. Nice grab by Rayjon Jones, hangs on for the first down. 2nd and 7, play action for the end zone. Rayjon Jones again, in for a touchdown, his 5th of the year. And just like that, we are right back up by 3 scores. Things can change quickly in college football. That was a really nice throw on the run by Clyde Poole, and a good route by Rayjon Jones. We said coming into this game, he needed to step up. Amani Law needed to step up. Isaiah Lamore needed to step up, and all 3 of those guys have delivered today with the absence of Mario Maddox. So now TCU's really got to get moving as Gecko Baker gets the first down. Following play, Hoover up the middle with a strike. That's Braylon James, who's got to be nearing the 100 yards mark at this point on the day. 2nd and 5, wheel route for Cam Cook, and the Horned Frogs are moving it quickly and efficiently inside the 25. 2nd and 10, looks like a screen. It's Stites, boom! Throws Mo Nwokeji off of him. Stites, of course, had the long touchdown earlier, as it's now 3rd and 1 after a nice gain of 9. Hoover looking back at the end zone, touchdown! Dozie Ezukanma, the redshirt sophomore, with his first catch of the game and a big one. Now the question is, did he keep the feet in bounds? The original call is that he did, but the booth is going to take a look and ultimately reverse it. The touchdown is off the board. Yeah, it looked like one of his toes was on the line. I think that's the right call. Obviously, they've got to go for it on 4th down. Blitz comes, and they get the touchdown after all. I don't know how you missed that tackle that poorly. That was abysmal. Lafayette Kayue with the touchdown, 37-27. Time for the onside kick, as it will be recovered quickly by Dorian Pepper, who hasn't had a big game through the air. But again, we needed him to step up without Maddox, and there's the big play. Offense with it, but not for long. Ty Lord, untouched, into the end zone. The icing on the cake. A 43-yard run for the true freshman, who's been really quiet over the last couple of weeks. He's been banged up. We've been limiting his workload. Prior to that carry, he only had 10 rushing yards over the last 2 weeks combined. But he's made some big plays in this game. A couple of huge catches. He had the big touchdown earlier in the 4th, and now the potential game-clinching touchdown to put us up by 3 scores late. Nearing the 2-minute warning, Hoover up the middle, quick throw. TCU knows they have no choice other than to move as fast as possible. One more play before the 2-minute warning. Hoover under a lot of pressure from Seth Jennings, who again, sending another pressure, isn't getting the sacks per se, but he's been productive. Launches it downfield on 3rd down, another huge gain inside the 10. Braylon James burns Landers, who's able to keep him out of the end zone. But it's a gain of 58 for James. 1st and goal. Hoover picked off! That should do it! Exodus Ayers, the sophomore transfer from Oregon State, with an acrobatic interception to ice this one for Kansas. They're going to take care of business here in Fort Worth and finish the year 9-3. Ayers' 2nd interception of the year. Impressive because he only has 3 tackles and has only played 49 snaps this year, but has made the most of his opportunities clearly. 44-27 your final. It was not always pretty. Despite our 23-0 start, TCU brought the deficit all the way within 3 to start the 4th quarter, but when we needed some big drives, we got them. Clyde Poole had the interception, and he nearly had the fumble too, but in the 4th quarter, he was really dialed in with a pair of passing touchdowns to a couple of his true freshmen in Ty Lord and Rayjon Jones. We had timely turnovers when we needed them. Caleb Purdy with the interception earlier in the 4th, and then Exodus Ayers to shut the door. We will finish Season 3 in the regular season with a record of 9-3. In between the first 2 seasons, Year 1 we went 11-1, last year 7-5. So smack dab in the middle, if you will. Was not a perfect game from Clyde Poole, but I thought that 4th quarter he was really impressive. He was efficient, did not put the ball in harm's way, and he was dialed in. On the ground, pretty solid day across the board. Cornell Teamers is stacking some really good performances in a row. He has been fantastic as of recent. Ty Lord, of course, with the 2 touchdowns. Amani Law stepped up. Isaiah Lamore stepped up. Rajon Jones stepped up. Pepper recovered the onside kick. Good to see all those guys producing. I thought we had a good game for the offensive line. And then defensively, dominant in the first quarter. The pass rush was unstoppable. Certainly worse after that, but definitely not one of our worst defensive performances, which, I mean, the bar's kind of on the floor. As for TCU, 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions for Josh Hoover. Very normal stat line for a quarterback playing against us. They could not run the ball, though. That was a big problem. Cook with only 35 yards, but the receivers played well. Everhart, Kaiue, James, Baker, Stites, all producing, but it was not enough because their defense let them down. Not many teams have been able to stop our ground game, and it's really hard to stop us when Clyde Poole is efficient, making all of the throws. So with that, we get the win against TCU. We take care of business, and now our fate is out of our hands. As I said going into the week, obviously we need UCF and Arizona State to lose if we want to make the conference championship. But assuming that doesn't happen, we need chaos across the country. We need as many teams ranked near us to lose as possible. A lot of really good games this week. Of course, rivalry week for most teams. I mean, TCU is not really a rival for us, but other teams playing against their rivals. As we start with one of the important matchups in the Big 12, UCF faces off against Texas Tech. We need a Red Raider win if we want to participate in the Big 12 championship, and I give Texas Tech some credit. They kept the game competitive, but they were not able to get the job done. UCF shaves off the upset. They win 35-30. They climb all the way up to number 3. Possible foreshadowing of things to come. And now there is no possible avenue for us to make the conference championship. The only way we can make the playoff is with an at-large bid. A good win here for UCF. I think regardless of what happens at the conference championship, they'll be in the playoff. So now that we need an at-large bid, we need teams like Georgia to lose. They're facing off against Georgia Tech, who's a solid squad in their own right, 7-4. Georgia led big at the half, but the Yellow Jackets were able to pour on the comeback in the second half to upset the Georgia Bulldogs. This is great news for us. It was 24-6 going into halftime, and Georgia completely blew it, so much so that it wasn't even a close ending. They lost by 2 scores. Zach Pryon, I'm pouring honey on you, GOAT. Eric Singleton Jr., I'm pouring honey on you, GOAT. Neither of those two should have to buy a drink in Lawrence, Kansas ever again. Tennessee faces off against Vanderbilt. Tennessee's a little bit farther down than, say, Georgia, but them losing would also be helpful. Unfortunately, that did not happen. While Georgia lost this week, most of the other 3-loss SEC teams won. Tennessee won, Mississippi State won the Egg Bowl, and then Oklahoma only had to play against Troy. They won as well. So all 3 of those teams take care of business. Oklahoma is ahead of us, whereas Mississippi State and Tennessee entered the week below us, and we'll see if that remains the case. We're headed to Seattle. Oregon faces off against Washington. The Ducks, number 1, looking to clinch a spot in the Big Ten Championship, and they would not do so. Washington with the upset, 28-24. I am going to go cry in my duck-sized hole. Now, luckily for Oregon, they should still be able to make the playoff as an at-large team. Of course, they were an at-large team last year. They were the number 5 seed, where they obviously ended up winning the whole thing. Dante Moore played pretty solid, throwing for 2 touchdowns, but not enough to beat their rivals. Demon Williams had a solid game through the air for the Washington Huskies in the win. It was a pretty successful year for Washington, going 8-4, and I think they've got a really good player at quarterback with Williams, who's going to be entering his senior season next year. So with Oregon no longer number 1, the winner of this game between Michigan and Maryland will take the top spot, and the winner of this game is going to the Big Ten Championship. So there's a lot at stake. This ended up being a really, really good matchup, but ultimately it was the Wolverines with this ridiculous touchdown by Samaj Morgan, winning at 34-30. That name should be some sort of negative flashback for Kansas fans, because Samaj Morgan, of course, is the one who scored the game-winning touchdown against us in the national championship back in year 1. Michigan now ranked number 1. Maryland only goes down 1 spot to number 4. They will be one of the top at-large teams in the playoff. I'm excited to see what MJ Morris and these boys can do. We haven't talked about Maryland a lot recently because they've taken care of business. They've done what they've needed to do. And the same can be said for Michigan. They had a great game from Patrick Anderson, who seems to be getting more acclimated to the starting spot. I am concerned about the ceiling of this team with their star running back Darius Taylor being unavailable through the playoff, but nonetheless, they're going to get to go to the Big Ten Championship, and with a win in that game, be the number 1 overall seed. Stanford and Wake Forest, the Demon Deacons, you guys can do us a big favor here. A Stanford loss would be very helpful, and sure enough, Wake Forest showed up! A 28-21 win for the Demon Deacons. So this means we're going to be able to jump Stanford in the polls, which makes our chances of an at-large spot a lot better. Now, hope is not lost for Stanford. They will be going to the ACC Championship. If they win that game, obviously they're in. If they lose that game, they're cooked. Oklahoma State faces off against Kansas State in Manhattan, Kansas. The Wildcats with a win can likely put themselves in the Big 12 Championship, but that would not be the case. Oklahoma State with the upset. So Kansas State loses their second conference game of the year, and this makes things a little bit wonky for them. They drop to number 13. They probably won't make the conference championship, and they are not in position to get an at-large bid. It's a little bit crazy that we have a worse record than Kansas State. Kansas State beat us head-to-head, yet we're going to finish the season ranked ahead of them. Shout out to EA Sports. They knew that Mario Maddox was in the end zone. Tulane facing off against Charlotte. A huge game in terms of Group 5 playoff implications. Charlotte with a win punches their ticket to the American Athletic Championship game. This one ended up going into double overtime, but this touchdown followed by a 2-point conversion would help Charlotte get the win. The 49ers ranked number 15. We'll see if they can possibly surpass UMass, who entered the week ranked ahead of them as the highest-ranked Group 5 team in the country. Gordon Podlusny, the true freshman for Tulane, throws for 6 touchdowns despite the loss. Do you guys remember in Miami's last game of the season last year where all they had to do was win and they would be in the playoff, and they ended up losing and got eliminated? Well, it's time for Miami to avenge themselves, and this time they made sure to take care of business with this really nice toe drag swag in the end zone from Ray Joseph. 42-35, they beat Syracuse in a pretty close one. Zion Turner played really well. I'm excited to watch him, not just in the playoff, but in the ACC Championship. It'll be Miami versus Stanford. The Hurricanes are ranked number 2. Even if they lose to Stanford, they will make the playoff regardless. As for Syracuse, pretty solid season going 7-5. I have no clue how they allowed 83 points to Clemson, given that they're a pretty good team. Here's one of our biggest games of the week. Notre Dame versus USC. 2 big-time rivals. Now a conference game with Notre Dame in the Big Ten. These 2 teams played against each other in year 1 for a spot in the playoff. It was won by Notre Dame. Last year, Notre Dame sucked, so the game didn't really matter. But this year, I feel like the implications are the same. The winner likely punches their tickets into the playoff, and sure enough, unlike year 1, it's USC. The Heisman frontrunner Xavier Jordan with his last act, if you will, and fittingly strikes the pose in the end zone. USC with the win over Notre Dame, 27-20, and for a second straight year, it looks like USC will be going to the playoffs as they climb all the way to number 6. However, Notre Dame will be going to the Big Ten Championship. They will play against Michigan, while Oregon, Maryland, and USC get to sit back and relax knowing they are already in the playoff. Sam Onatulu with 48 passing touchdowns to finish the year. And then Xavier Jordan, I think he won himself the Heisman Trophy in this game. UMass faces off against Hawaii. The Minutemen, in their first season in the MAC, are currently the highest-ranked Group of 5 team at 10-1. This game ended up being actually somewhat competitive here across the Pacific Ocean. But UMass would win it. This doesn't necessarily affect things for them going in the MAC championship, given that Hawaii is not in the MAC. But they still had to win this game because, well, if they want to be one of the highest-ranked Group of 5 teams, they've got to keep that record squeaky clean, as they are now 11-1. Ahmad Haston, the junior quarterback, leads the way. He had a really good game in the win for UMass. They are number 12. They are the highest-ranked Group of 5 champion currently. South Carolina faces off against Clemson. The Tigers will not be going to the ACC Championship, so they're pretty much winning in, losing out. And with this pass being batted into the hands of TJ Moore, that should tell you what you need to know. Clemson is going back to the playoff, 28-10 over South Carolina. They are currently ranked number 5, and they will likely get a home game in the first round. Lenoris Sellers beats his old school. South Carolina fans look away. Certainly doesn't help for the Gamecocks that their standout sophomore quarterback, Corin LaRoque, was hurt. Dante Reno was good on the ground, but unimpressive through the air. Alabama faces off against Auburn with a win. The Tide will be going to the SEC Championship to meet Florida. This game ended up being a complete blowout. Alabama took care of business 52-14. Eli Holstein was cooking. Ryan Williams with an incredible play here. Now, I don't want to buy into Alabama because I've bought into them over the last couple of years and it's bit me in the rear end. They start the year off poorly, then they finally start to play well, and they lose a big game at the end of the year that keeps them out of the playoff. I feel like that's going to happen again in the SEC Championship against Florida, but we also can't deny that these guys are playing well. Eli Holstein throws for 4 scores to 4 different players, no less. As for Auburn, rough year for them. I thought they did some good things last year, but even with 2 potential top 50 picks at receiver with Perry Thompson and Cam Coleman, they went 1-7 in conference. So as I mentioned, Florida is already going to the SEC Championship. The result of this game will not affect that, but they still need to win this game to guarantee themselves at bare minimum an at-large spot in the playoff. But not only did they lose to Florida State, but they also lost some pride given that it's a rival. And they got blown out, 31-8. Florida, who was the last undefeated team left, I think they started 10-0, have now lost 2 in a row and are ranked number 19. Now, they are still a win and in with a victory over Alabama in the SEC Championship, but if they lose, they're out. Season's over. We'll wrap the week up with Arizona State versus Arizona. With Kansas State losing, the Sun Devils are guaranteed a spot in the Big 12 Championship, and it looked like they knew that playing in this game as Arizona ends up getting the win. A very solid season for the Wildcats. They finish 8-4. Obviously, we know they're a tough team. They beat us in our house. Now, for Arizona State, it gets a little bit wonky because they're outside of the top 25. Even if they beat UCF in the conference championship, there's no guarantee that they would actually get a playoff spot. UMass or Charlotte or Tulsa or somebody else could easily be ranked ahead of them. So Arizona State still really needed to win this game. So this is a major blow, losing the final 2 games of their season. Relying on turnovers and big defensive plays can only get you so far, and it looks like the clock might have struck midnight for the Sun Devils. Across the country, we mentioned Mississippi State. They beat Ole Miss, finishing the year 9-3. NC State over UNC. They also finish with a record of 9-3. Army against East Carolina. We'll talk about Army-Navy in just a little bit. Boise State beats Colorado State. Ohio State rattles off a few wins in a row. Oklahoma ranked number 7 as they take care of business against Troy. And then looking at Big 12 action, West Virginia and Utah both finished 6-6. A nice win for the Mountaineers, but certainly a fall off after starting the year 4-0. Cincinnati finishes 6-6. Colorado keeps Baylor out of bowl eligibility. The Buffs win 24-20. And then across the country, some more highlights here include Arkansas State. They were one of the last teams to lose a game this year. I think they started 6-0. They finished the year 8-4. UAB also finishes 8-4, a disastrous end of the season for the Blazers. SMU beats Cal. The Mustangs finish 4-8 after back-to-back playoff appearances. The reigning national champion Texas A&M Aggies, meanwhile, finished 7-5 with a win against LSU. Purdue finishes their season with a record of 7-5. It was a great start to the year for Purdue, but they certainly slipped up as the season continued. Let's take a look at our rankings. I'm sure you guys noticed we are currently ranked number 10. So we climbed up 2 spots in the polls, and we're going to look in just a moment in terms of where that would put us in the playoff picture. So a couple of teams did jump us, as expected. USC leapfrogs us. Oklahoma takes a nice bounce up. Alabama is inching closer to us. I would expect they would pass us if they beat Florida in the SEC Championship. Not that that would really matter because Alabama would have an at-large bid anyway. But as it stands now, are we in the playoff? Yes, we are! The Kansas Jayhawks are the last team in at the moment and would head to Death Valley to play against Clemson in the first round. Remember, we played at Clemson just a year ago, so it would be fun to go back there once again. We finished the year 4th in Big 12 play and 10th overall in the poll in the regular season. It is a little bit ironic, though, that you have Kansas State, who beat us and has a better record below us. Florida beat us, better record, better conference. They finished below us as well, as Zion Kearney and CJ Madden win the Players of the Week. Cordell Russell and Keanu Tanuvasa within the conference. I'm excited to talk about both CJ Madden and Keanu Tanuvasa in the Broncos episode tomorrow. Those two guys are really good prospects. Xavier Jordan back in first place for the Heisman race. I think he's got the award locked up. Dante Moore, despite the loss, climbs up to 3rd. He always should have been that high to begin with. Moore only has 1 interception all year and has widened the gap as the number 1 pick. It is a bye week, so we will cover another week of recruiting here. Markel Jocelyn will commit. Jocelyn is a talented 4-star from Fairfield High Prep. Another defensive lineman to add to the room. It is going to be a crowded group, especially with another addition. Greg Von Oelhoffen from Leesburg, Georgia, and Lee County High School. Von Oelhoffen is a top 85 ranked player nationally. He is our 5th ranked commit on the board. I think he's going to be one of the best players in this recruiting class when it's all said and done. I am very excited to land him. Unfortunately, we do have some losses within this week's stretch of recruiting. Kion Ferrote is going to Wisconsin. The visit clearly did end up going well, and they swipe him away from us at the last minute. So unfortunately, we lose out on him. But it's not the end of the world because Mike Jefferson, the other center on the board, we are in first place and we should land him. Manu Toilolo is going to Oklahoma State. I thought we would have enough influence to pass them. I was expecting to land him. So I'm a little disappointed that that's not the case. Nonetheless, we do add 2 more very talented defensive linemen. We've got like at least 5 or 6 commits on the defensive line at this point, with a few other guys still on the board. There aren't many uncommitted players left, and we're going to do something a little bit unconventional. I will intentionally not use all of our recruiting hours. As I talked about earlier in the year, I don't want a full class of 35 players because after recruiting, we're going to have to cut a lot of guys on the roster. The game will not let me cut true freshmen. So because of that, we would probably have to encourage some pretty solid players to transfer away who might be quite a bit better than some of these guys. Nobody committed the following week. I figured I would show that because, well, there isn't really any news here. But let's briefly cover Week 14. We've got Army and Navy, obviously a staple of the college football calendar. A very fun game each year. And there's a lot more at stake in this game, especially for Navy. The Midshipmen are the only winless team across the country this year, so they certainly do not want to go 0-12. And I feel like the Army and Navy game is sort of the signal that the regular season is over and it's on to the postseason, if you will, which obviously is now where our full focus is. This game ended up being as ugly as you would expect. Not a lot of passing in the snow, traditional triple option, Army and Navy style football. But Kanye Udoh, the senior back, who has a future in the NFL rather than the Army, helps lead the Black Knights to the win 27-7. Army does not move up in the rankings, and they shouldn't because Navy is god-awful. Their quarterback, Kareem Okine, only completed 5 passes, while Braxton Woodson, the Navy quarterback, also only completed 5. Very on brand, and with that, we have made it to Conference Championship Week, which we will not be participating in. We will be watching from the sideline. These are the games that will determine if we make the playoff, and there's a couple in particular that I want to highlight that I think will determine if we get in or not, because right now we are the last team in the playoff, but we have to watch out for bid stealers, teams who are not currently in the playoff who could steal a spot from an at-large team like us. I look at UCF versus Arizona State, and I look at Miami versus Stanford. We need the favorites to win those games. We need UCF to win, and we need Miami to win. That way, a team like Arizona State, or more likely Stanford, can't grab an automatic bid and push, say, Miami to an at-large spot. Because if that happens, the team that Miami would be pushing out is us. So we need a few things to go our way, and if they do, I think we're going to the playoff. It kind of feels like a 50-50 shot right now. It's going to be really close. Next episode, we will be covering the conference championship games, and we will find out if we're going to the playoff. That'll be uploaded probably this coming Wednesday. Hope you guys are excited for that. A lot is at stake. Our fate is no longer in our own hands, which is a little bit scary, but hopefully things go our way and we are going to the playoff. Hope everyone enjoyed. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Peace out.